Welcome to the I Create Daily podcast. I'm Leora Alderson.
And I'm Devani Alderson. We're your co-hosts on this journey of creativity and productivity.
I Create Daily is for artists in every genre of creating, from musicians to writers, crafters to inventors, bloggers to entrepreneurs. I Create Daily is a movement for creators serious about your art.
If you're into creating anything, this podcast is definitely for you. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Hello and welcome to another episode of the I Create Daily podcast, a movement for creators serious about their art. I'm Devani.
And I'm Leora. And our guest today is Bruna Mebs, a Brazilian artist and entrepreneur. She has spent the past few years working with creative people from all over the US and became best known for her ink drawings. Bruna is a phenomenal illustrator serving a variety of clients, including FabFitFun, Farmhouse Inns, Jord, Leota and Meredith Banzhoff. Bruna's artwork has been featured on many blogs as well, including The Skinny Confidential, KERF, that's KERF, and Friend for the Ride. Bruna has recently illustrated and published her first coloring book as well, the Olympic Games coloring book. After spending some time in New York City and LA, Bruna now resides in Pennsylvania with her husband and bulldog, Achilles. Welcome, Bruna.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on, and we're so excited.
We were looking through your Instagram and your YouTube videos, and your house is like design goals.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
It's so funny you guys saying that because I feel like I do the same thing with other people, you know?
No, and your site is just so beautiful. I mean, your eye for design, detail, and art is just exquisite and so clear in everything you do and everything you put out online.
And so elegant too, in such a simple way.
Yeah.
Thank you. So nice of you guys.
So it's just and we know our audience is going to love everything that you're doing, and you're doing so much. It's like almost overwhelming to know like where to start. So let's start with what did you start doing in the world of art? How did you get started, and how has that evolved? I know that's a huge question, but let's start.
Been down to the beginning, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I do have to go a little bit all the way back because my grandmother is an art teacher. Mm. So art has been a part of my life, I guess, since I remember. But before I actually thought that I was, I guess, good enough to actually take on art myself, I worked as a costume designer and fashion design for a few years before actually. And I was doing already a little bit of freelancing in illustration, but it was more like people that I knew around me that knew that I was doing some drawings and like, can you do this for me? Mm-hmm. So that ended up growing naturally. And then I ended up having to make a choice, I guess, in which way to continue to do, because I couldn't really do costume and this at the same time. And so then I ended up deciding to go straight with just the artwork. So that took over on its own, I guess.
Yeah. So recently you turned 30, right?
Yes, that was last weekend.
So we're recording this on October 18th, and so was that the 13th?
The 12th, yeah.
12th. Okay, October 12th.
Happy late birthday.
Yeah, we saw your photos on Instagram about that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be revealing your age. But there, right? And that's so. How long? When did that begin? That you started doing your own business full time? About how long ago was that?
So, I think what I consider, I guess, the first year of being a full-time illustrator was 2015. So 3 years ago. I think before then I was still trying to do a little bit of both things still. So yeah, I think 2015 is when I officially can say it was full time.
Right.
So you've grown your brand pretty quickly. When you were working in the fashion and the costume design, was that like a really fun job? Because a lot of people, when we talk to several creatives, they have a day job that they don't necessarily enjoy, which is why they start thinking like, hey, maybe I can make my art my day job. But doing costume design sounds pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely fun and also a very creative job. I'm lucky to say that I did, you know, I started working very early since I was like 15 years old. I used to work in my dad's company doing design, graphic design for him and things like that. So I've done a bunch of things, like I worked in coffee shops and retail and all of this. So I did have the part of doing the jobs that I guess I don't dream about doing it. But I was very lucky to also have a job or to have chosen a school and a career that actually was very creative still. So it wasn't like I did not like doing costumes. It was more like I liked both equally, I guess. And I actually had to pick one because I just couldn't possibly do both. Like if anybody that knows anything about the film industry, it's like you're working 16, 18 hours a day, you're away from home, and you're gone for like 4 to 6 months in a movie shoot, and you don't really have time for anything else. So even though I pretend that I could balance both, I just couldn't. So I had to actually make a decision.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that because, you know, it sounds like a dream job, very glamorous, being on movie sets, etc. But the reality is that, you know, you're in a trailer or in a room someplace, you know, working.
I was one of those people that thought the whole glamour and fun was going to be, you know, and then even thought of going to hotels and stuff like that and traveling would be fun. And then the reality is you're actually pretty much in a room somewhere else or freezing cold somewhere else. And then you're missing home and you're in a hotel. You can't take another hotel room and living out of suitcases. And, you know, it very quickly made me realize that that whole like movie that they picture in the movies is not how actually it works. And, you know, especially not being the actor or the actresses and being, you know, in the costume department, we were always pretty much crying the end of every day of exhaustion. So it was definitely not glamorous at all.
Yeah, and you definitely didn't have time for a side job there, you know, so I guess when you were doing side jobs, it was in between movie set jobs or like on weekends, right?
That was exactly what I used to do. And then as soon as I would get the call for the next one, I would have to be like, oh, but I'm not done with the illustration for that job, you know. It was crazy.
So were you professionally trained besides your grandmother? Like, did you actually go to school for art beyond that, or has it all been experiential?
So I went to school for fashion design, knowing that I wanted to do costume. But so when you go to any fashion school, you kind of learn both ways, the sewing part and the drawing part, I guess. And obviously the drawing part was my favorite part. So I should have known then that was somehow was going to take over, but I guess I didn't put it together that it was going to actually just be what I wanted to do. But I used to, any classes about drawing, like we used to have to do model drawing and life drawing. Like they do give you a base more than just fashion drawing, I guess. And I used to take them all. So, and just used to always be pushing the sewing away. I'm like, I don't want to sew anything. I just want to be drawing all these clothes, you know? So I didn't actually go to a for a drawing or art school, but I also did major in art history. So I don't consider myself having a professional education in being an artist, but I guess I did have drawing lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the best education is doing it, right? You know, in the end, it's just
exactly. And
a lot of that.
Honestly, even after school, I didn't think my artwork was good. You know, it was more from I just like doing it. So then from doing it so much, I guess you do improve naturally.
So I was going to ask you something else, but since you just said that, and we like to have organic conversations.
Yeah.
When did you think and feel that your work was good enough?
Gosh, do I even think it's a good or enough now? It's a hard question. I'm like, my husband always jokes that there was a point that I used to be drawing, just throwing all the work away before he actually could see it. And he would be so mad because he thought it was good, you know? And I was like, no, this isn't even good enough for him to see it. So I don't do that anymore. So maybe I guess we're in a good point now that I'm able to say this is not my favorite, but I don't need to throw it away.
Yeah.
So I think, oh gosh, that is such a hard question. I think maybe to around 6 months of doing it every single day, I think I started to not feel embarrassed at least about it and put it out there online, you know, and hopefully if you go back to my Instagram, I guess you can probably see some of the earlier things from 2 to 3 years ago that I can probably say I'm not proud of it, but I was already like, I'm putting it out there. I don't care. I want to see what people say, you know?
Yeah, so. Definitely. That's so important. It's really great for you to share that, because I think that's like a common malady amongst artists is,
it's not good enough.
It's not good enough.
I'm not good enough.
Yeah, because we always, it's quite a process of bringing your vision, and down to the physical plane. It's like the perfection can live in the mind, and it's harder to accomplish in reality. So I can see where we always kind of like always feel like there's always something else we could do to make it better, and yet the best way to get better is just to keep doing lots of art, and like you say, putting it out there so that we also get the feedback from the audience, which that's a whole other topic, right? Because it's good to have feedback, but at the same time to not change exactly what you're doing based on that, right?
Yeah, I read it somewhere. I can't actually exactly remember where, but somebody was saying that you need to remember to just consider it done and not perfect. Because if you're trying to achieve perfection with any art piece, I think it's impossible. You'll probably die working on the same piece. And nowadays it's so important that you think of quality, but you also think of quantity, because you need to start sharing your things and not just have one amazing piece hidden in your house and people will see when you die, right? So then it's important. I think I tell myself that every day sometimes, like, okay, it's done, not perfect, and I'm okay with it,
Yeah, that's a good advice. You mentioned that after about 6 months of doing art daily, you finally started, building that courage to put it online and share it with other people. Do you still have your daily art practice? Is it the same? Has it been the same from the beginning? Like, you make a piece of art every day. Has it shifted any? It's very different.
So like I said, I grew up drawing, so it wasn't like I started one day and then the 6 months and then that happened, but it was more that I told myself that was actually going to be somewhat of what I wanted to do instead of just being a hobby, I guess. So that was the key 6 months, but I don't want people to think that was the first line I ever drew, because I do think this long period of my whole life did add up. Even if it was a little bit here and there of maybe how I see color, maybe how I see, I don't know how those things actually slowly added to the whole thing I know, but that period when I decided to stop taking on film and just drawing a lot, I didn't have a job then, because I decided to just save from all the films that I was doing, and when I started thinking about quitting, I ended up taking a few other jobs and saving a little bit more. And then I took that period of 6 months that I actually didn't have a job and just decided that I was going to put it out there, practice my best, and see if I can actually get more jobs doing that, or if I should go back to. That was a good thing too, because it wasn't like a job that I quit and I couldn't go back to. So I did have that plan B, I guess. If this didn't work, I could always go back and do that. But so then I was drawing every day, and now, oh gosh, sometimes I wish it was still like that I would be just drawing my own terms. My days are mostly filled with commissions right now, so I am still drawing, but not what I want to draw, I guess. Does that make sense?
Sure. So, and you have a whole other, business aspect that we want to, your lifestyle design studio and such. We want to get to that a little bit later. But we have a lot of artists or inspiring artists in our audience. And so we really want to understand and learn from your journey and evolution. So specifically, you do ink drawing. How else do you describe, like what is the actual terms for describing all of the kind of art that you do?
Yeah, so that was the 6 months that I decided to take. I did not have a style or a specific medium that I liked. So what I told myself was, first month I'm just going to work with pencil. The second month I'm going to work with ink. The third month I'm going to work with watercolor. And then in the end of the 6 months, I'm going to know which one I like the most, right? And what happened was I liked them all. So I was like, great, now I have no idea how am I going to focus this. And since I was already sharing a little bit of all these different mediums, I started getting people asking me to do watercolor portraits, and some people asking me to do pencil drawings, and some people asking me to do ink. So I kind of ended up having to do them all just because I needed all the work that I could get. And that became a little bit of a messy portfolio, I guess. And the OCD was like, oh my God, I gotta fix this. They don't look good together, you know?
No.
So I think that was more like last year, when I decided to do the branding thing that we can talk about it more later, knew that I had to pick a medium to make it all look the same. And from doing those three things or these three mediums for the past few years, I knew the ink was the closest that I could get to, I guess, a classic style that I could also bring up to a lifestyle brand. So that's when I chose that. Mm-hmm. But I do still own my Etsy shop, which is all watercolor, because people ask me to do it and I need to get all the work I can get. So I'm not going to tell you if you ask me to do, I don't know, if you ask me to do acrylic, I'll probably learn how to do acrylic. I'm like, I need the work, you know? So I'm not like, oh, I only do this. But if I could choose in the perfect world, I think I would just stick to the ink because it's, I think what it comes more natural to me.
So what kind of, I think is fascinating. So first, I want to mention something about all the choices that you made, but first I wanted to ask, what kind of ink do you use and prefer?
I actually have it right here. I'll probably have to read. So I mostly now been using just the micro pen because they're so practical and they're affordable. I have that problem that I think most artists do, that when you go to art store, you want to get everything and you want to try them all. And I've tried all the different like expensive inks and the nibs and all of the cool ones that look so cool. And then in the end of the day, I'm like, I just need what makes it the fastest, more practical, and the safest medium. Because if you use nibs or like the dip pens or things like that for ink, it's so easy to make a mistake.
Right.
You don't want to risk that time you put into it because of like you sneezed or something, you know, or your dog made a noise and made you jump. And that had happened to me so many times that I'm like, you know what? I can't afford to be making mistakes. So the pen was just like, you know, we want to tell that we're using cool things to other people, but I always just go to like, you know, now that it's actually a business, not just a hobby, I go to what brings me the most value.
That's such a good point, because I think we often get caught up in, like, we see somebody who's a pro and they've been doing it forever and they have like all the right tools, and we think like, I need that right tool, I need their setting. If I had their studio and if I were in their shoes with their studio, all of this would just be perfect and all my issues would be gone. But you get down to it and even the pros are like, well, I'm using this pen because this pen works. That's all I need.
It is. I'm guilty of that. Like I would just wish I could own an art supply store. But I also think that's another thing that I think it could be helpful to let other artists know is any sort of constriction that you put in yourself, I think it's actually when you get the most creative.
Love that.
So I do that. I force that to myself a lot. Even if it's a personal project, I constrict myself saying this whole project is going to be with this pen. This whole project is going to be with this kind of paper. This whole project is going to be done in this many hours. And I'm not going to look for any more inspiration or any more artists online. Because if you allow yourself to be open to anything, I think you get so overwhelmed, right? It's like, that's why I think schools sometimes can be helpful, because they give you a project. You have to follow their guides. And I do that I'm crazy, probably making my life a lot harder than it has to be. But I do force those constrictions in me. And I think that's when you realize, oh, I could have used this way. I would have never got to that point if I knew I could just get another pen or something like that. You know?
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Yeah, there's one of the books we often recommend is titled A Beautiful Constraint. And it is all about how the creation of constraints actually almost like forces or nurtures, a greater creativity.
I'm going to write that down. That sounds like my book.
It's a beautiful book too, written by designers. So I'm sure you'd love it.
Yeah, you'll love it. It's very dense, very thick, and almost like a textbook. It totally could be used as a textbook. But yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. It's one of those things that's hard to read all the way through because it's so thick and dense. with lots of good information, but it's a really good reference book as well as for inspiration. So on the ink, so the metaphor that came to mind when you were talking about trying something of everything. First of all, I mean, in and of itself, during those 6 months, you gave yourself a constraint. This month is only this item, right? And so that was really wonderful, and you ended up loving them all. The metaphor is like what's happening in your brain is you're building the synapses, between, the strands, the neuron strands, and the interactions, and your synapsing of your brain. And the more we travel down the same pathway, whether it's in the woods or whether it's in our brain, then the stronger and the bigger and more vibrant that pathway becomes. And so by constantly practicing art every day, it's like driving down the highway. Like we have a highway now between where we are, what we want to conceive, and our ability to do it, because we've been doing it every day. So our creativity and our ability to draw, your ability to draw, is there and it's pronounced. And then the specific medium is just a matter of deciding which exit to get off. So it's like, I'm going to exit here and use watercolor today. I'm going to exit here and use, but you prefer to go home to the ink. So I mean, that would be one way of looking at it. It was interesting choosing ink because it is so unforgiving. So what are some of your thoughts about why you prefer it?
Yeah, it's the opposite for me. It's because I don't have to worry about color, so it's even more constricted. I guess. Yeah, makes sense. Because that's what, like, when I started working with watercolor, there's so many paint brands and brushes and palettes, and I want all of them, and I want to try them all. And how am I supposed to actually choose a favorite? And I think just that in itself, it's a job. Like you researching and looking and trying to save money, because obviously art supplies are so expensive. And it's ink, I think, even though I didn't choose on purpose to focus on that, the constraint of just, this is it, it's black on white paper, and what needs to actually give the meaning to the art is the art itself, and not like a shading of color. And there's no shading with ink either. I mean, you can do different techniques to shade your drawing, but there's no lighter black or darker black. It's just one tone. And I think that in itself for me it is very helpful to make it simpler, I guess. I'm always trying to make things simpler because I feel like I overcomplicate everything. So I force myself to, like simplify. And I think that was one of the reasons why I really liked using ink. And the other thing is, I like the idea of having something done in black and white. And if I want to add color on the computer, I can still do that. Yeah. So I can't take the color away almost. Yeah. So I think that worked well. And I'm also a huge fan of anything old looking, vintage, classic. Like, you take me to an antique shop or old movie or something, and I'm like, I don't know what I like more about it. And I think ink is the one that still looks the most vintage, because watercolor is supposed to be that way, but it became so popular now that it looks so modern, and ink still doesn't. So I think that was probably why I chose that.
On your homepage of your website, which is brunamebs.com, BRUNAMEBS.com, you have a beautiful painting duo, and it is a picture of a yacht or boat, and one is white background and the other half of it is a black background. So the white background or cream background, and it has the ink sketch boat, and the other is the black background and it has the white sketch. So I don't know if people can picture this visually.
We'll put it in we'll put an image of it in the article.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll put an image with a link to your site. But that's a really interesting, intriguing arrangement. I love that, the side-by-side. So what would you like to say about doing that and your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it's funny because it's almost nowadays with the computer and things, what I thought was going to make it constricted from staying with black and white became now an endless option of what I can do on the computer, that it's like, oh my God, now what? How can I actually choose? Or, because when I'm creating the prints after scanning the artwork, I can do any combination of colors, of paper, of texture, or, thickness of lines. Like, it's endless. And you can take, if you don't have like a deadline for that project to be done, you can be lost in it.
Yeah.
Because it's fun. It's fun to see how many other ways you can do. Can I do this with a white background? Can I do this in dark and light, or mixing, and I think it's that example of that project was something for me that was like kind of in the beginning when I started to play more with the art itself and changing in the on Photoshop. And I remember when I was doing that project was like, I probably had created like 50 different options for it. And it's funny that it just ended up choosing the most simplest ones of the dark and light. But I think that's one of the good things about ink is that you can actually push after the work is done. How else can you make that look different? And they look so different.
Yeah.
Just by changing the background or the color of the lines.
I think what's really fascinating is that I don't think a lot of creatives consider themselves as black and white thinkers, or they like to express with colors and different, like sometimes there's a fun intrigue in deciding like what shade am I going to use or whatever. But with your art, it almost hones in on the beauty of just, here's the finished piece, here's the object, here's what I'm conveying in a black and white thing. And then in your mind, it's almost like reading a book. Most books aren't written in different colored text. Mm-hmm. Story is in black and white, and in your mind, you can make it anything you want. Yeah. So the fact that your art is black and white almost allows the viewer to then take the piece and make it their own. So like we could imagine this boat on an ocean that's in the Caribbean, or a sea that's dark blue, like it's creating a co-experience.
That's nice to hear, because it's sometimes seeing how people actually see your work, it's not something you would expect, I guess, to be the obvious way. It's nice to see that actually it gives people space for interpretation, I guess.
So on your commission work, like how do they find you? Where do you get most of your jobs? You've worked for some major companies, you work for illustrations for products, you've worked for blogs and creating art for different bloggers. So how do you get, so it sounds like it's an array. How do most of them find you, and about how many do you do per, and I know that the how many question really depends on what it is. So just like an average, how many you might do a month? Yeah.
So the beginning, like the first year actually that I was putting stuff out on Instagram, and I do think I already had a blog too. Or on Facebook. It was, some people did find me in the beginning. I don't remember I don't know if they found through a hashtag or something. And I thought, oh, great, they're finding me. I don't need to do anything, right? They're just going to be finding me because I'm online. And that was it, kind of, right? And then it stopped, and then it's like, okay, so what happened? Was it, beginner's luck, I guess? Yeah. And then I realized I can't just sit around and expect people to find my stuff, right? There's so many people out there. And I think that's for anyone that is listening or watching, you have to put yourself in the go-getter mindset, because you can wait around forever. And it's not that they didn't want you to actually work for them, they just didn't know about you, right? So when you reach out, you're actually opening the possibilities instead of, like, I know it's hard sometimes because you don't want to sound desperate, or you're begging for work, please hire me, or I trust me, my work is great. You don't want to do that, but it's more that you just saying, hey, I'm out here in case you're looking for somebody. Here's my stuff. You might find it interesting. And I think I've done that. Like most of the collaborative bloggers that I found, I was the one actually reaching out to them and say, I would love to collaborate with you. I don't know if this is something you do or if you're interested, but here's my email, my portfolio. If you have some time, take a look. And in the beginning, you just send like hundreds of emails and you get like 2 replies, but those 2 replies are a yes.
Yeah.
So, why not? Like, it doesn't matter how many it takes to get the 1 or 2 that say yes, because that's how you slowly build. And then they are going to probably talk about what you did for them, and that will bring more people. And when you realize you actually are having more people reaching out to you, then, you know, without actually magic happening. Because I do think sometimes we feel like, oh, these people got so lucky. They're, you know, maybe they just got this big break, and that didn't happen for me. It was really like slow emails or messaging people, or actually a lot of times I did the work before I emailed them. Like, let's say it was a blogger with a kid and I wanted to do their portrait. I would do the portrait beforehand.
Wow.
And then send to them. And yeah, it took the time, but I also always saw those things as practice.
Yeah.
Everybody's probably doing a personal project anyway. Might as well do something that somebody else can use it for something.
Excellent.
So
Such a good mindset.
yeah, and that worked for me. I know a lot of people have a hard time even doing competitions or things that are free because they think their time is worth every penny. And yes, it is worth every penny, but until you are at the point that people are looking for you and hiring you, you have to, it's like an actor, right? They have to do how many different interviews or, you know, to actually get that one job. Right. I see artists are the same way. You have to do a bunch of little free things until one is your big break. One, maybe it's, I don't know, Coca-Cola is hiring you. I don't know. Yeah. You don't know who's going to see your work, especially online. You don't know who the next email is going to come from, who might stumble upon that piece. So I'm really I really tell people, like, yes, do the thing for free. I know it's annoying. I know it's not telling them that your work is not worth any money. It's just, you're not there yet, right? We have to just give it for free. And it's like a baker giving samples of their food. Yeah. Like, we have to do that, and that's our sample. It's just unfortunate that our sample takes forever to do. It's not like baking a bunch of cake and giving him a few pieces, but it's our sample. So
yeah, I mean, you know, there are so many industries that have that, like realtors, for instance, you know, they spend hours and hours, you know, showing people homes that they may never end up closing, you know. Yeah. So, and there are certain industries where that's certainly the case. It's, for realtors, it's probably less now that people can look at a lot of it online. It saves them a lot of time, but they still have to, when it comes down to it, take the people inside, you know, to the different houses. So,
and it's even like a lot of people compare to, well, you don't go to a coffee shop and they don't make a free coffee for you and make sure you like it. But at the same time, we forget that, well, they're now an established brand. Yeah. I can bet you when they were a tiny brand that nobody knew, they were handing out free coffee probably,
and,
you know?
Yeah, and when they introduce a new coffee drink or a new dessert, then they still give a free sample.
It's like an entry education almost, or an education fee for your own business.
Yeah, and honestly, from experience, the likability of that free thing will actually turn into something paid or another order that they would tell their best friend. It always happens to me. So it's never been like, oh, that was not worth all that. It was always like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did it. I almost didn't do it.
That's so good to hear. And it's such an important point too, because one of the thought leaders we hear that we cite often here is Gary Vaynerchuk, and he's all about, he wrote a book titled The Thank You Economy. And it is that concept. It's like, you know, that you give, you put it out there in the world, and at some point it will come back. And you do it intentionally and with some calculation. In other words, you're not going to contact you know, a blog that, like a big brand that already clearly has their own artist, or, you know, whatever it may be. You have to use some thought to it and then follow up, because that's another thing. We get contacted by writers, for instance, and they may not follow up, you know. So if an artist says, you know, hey, I can do this for you, and then the person replies, but they never follow up. You know, so it just requires some common sense and some fortitude and some persistence. Of all the things you've done, I know that you've done them all, and it's good to do them all, but have you seen any trends so far in what is producing the most results for you between the platforms? And go ahead.
So regarding the platform itself, I do think, there's no way around Instagram nowadays, even, you know, just because it's only visual photos. That's what artists are doing, is only visual. It doesn't matter you have a great story behind, it's still the visual that it's selling. So that's really important. I do love YouTube so much, but YouTube, it's something that it's so demanding, and so you do need to put so much time into it, that I'm still consider myself such a beginner at it, because I don't even know. I think I may have like a little over 1,000 followers or something. But, and then sometimes you just like, oh, it's also another thing, like not be focused on those 1,000 followers, because all you need is that one follower that really likes your work and purchase once in a while, or that one follower that owns a business that will hire you. So, you know, and I know it's hard when you're comparing yourself to like people with 1 million. And I am such a Gary Vee fan too. So it's like, but you have to, like I said, be patient and keep putting it out there. But Instagram has brought me the most amount of actual sales or paid commissions.
That's good.
But I don't know if because I just put a lot more effort and being there longer, so it might be relatable.
Too, you know, where you put your effort and energy is where a lot of that's going to come. A lot of your results are going to come from. Do you have advice for, now that you're doing commission work and selling and stuff, do you have advice for somebody who's just starting out? They're trying to go through the, how am I going to focus? How am I going to pick something? All these great artists are out here. Mm-hmm. How do I establish myself as a creator?
Do you mean on Instagram exactly, or anywhere?
Just getting started. Like, do you have advice for people who are starting and they're going, like when you were a beginner, you were like, I'm going to take this 6 months and I'm going to try these different mediums and I'm going to figure out what I like. Do you recommend that for most beginners?
Are you talking about getting started in making the art, or getting started in the platforms?
In making the art.
In making the art. Okay. So I think it depends exactly of what beginner stage, I guess, you're considering. If you haven't gone to school yet, or if you're planning on going to school, or if you are already gone to school and now you actually want to make that. I think they're probably a little bit different, because when you before you go to school, you're going to test all of those things probably in school itself, because they're going to force you to do that. That's pretty much what I think art schools are all about. It's more helping you test a bunch of things and find what you like. Which I also have a little bit of like a difficult time when it comes to art schools, just because I am a big believer that a school or a great school will make you a great artist. You can be a great artist without going to school. You're going to have to work just as hard going to school or not. Yeah. School is just there. And especially if you're going to get all those expensive student loans, you know, really think about it, because you can get as much of great experience of doing your work if you just push yourself really hard and save all the money maybe, and actually put that money to using that into your time. Yes. You know, having to get a job when you leave school, and then where's the time to make the art anyway, because now you got to pay school. But anyway, that's a whole different topic.
Yeah, we love that. We agree 100%.
Yeah. So even with my own school, like I'm still paying the stupid student loans. I don't know how many more, years I have to actually pay them for, but I think everything I learned was actually doing on my own. But that, obviously, if your parents can pay for it, just go ahead and do it, I guess.
Yeah, well, no, that's a really good point, though. And so I think it's really good to emphasize that, because your experience is not unusual, and many people have experienced that, including that when you were going to school for costume design, for instance, no one really told you, well, maybe they did, but I'm not sure if they didn't doesn't sound like they told you about the reality of how hard that work actually was. It was
actually I went actually for a fashion design school, so it wasn't, even though I wanted to do costume, I couldn't find a school undergrad for costume. You first have to go through something, then do a grad degree. So fashion, I guess, was the closest, and they make you go to school thinking everybody's going to be a Chanel tomorrow. It's like the reality of that happening and you getting a job afterwards from that. It's just sad, and it's dangerous almost. It's bad information, bad hope, I guess, to people starting out, because it's the business side and the making money part of it. I think in any art school is just like, we don't need to talk about this. I just keep talking about this wonderful world that we're all living in school. And then, welcome to the real world when you get out, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
Who's going to actually pay me to just be creating mood boards? And looking for inspiration and testing materials. But so that's why I think it's hard when you, depending on the phase of a beginner you are or how old you are, right? Because you might be at a point in your life that you have a mortgage and kids. And you might be in your point of your life that you're still a teenager. Everybody can be called a beginner when it comes to making art. So I think you just need to be, before anything, very responsible with how you're going to pay your bills, right? We need to all survive and we need to all make a living. And no, I don't believe that any good art comes out of if you're living on the streets, or, you know, if you're starving, or if you're not healthy and putting your life in danger. So I don't think those things are worth it, the risk. So if you're in a stage that you're still choosing a style or deciding materials, I think setting a specific limit time to test them and stick to them and actually give them enough time to jump off of the beginner stage of like, this is super hard, I don't think I like it because it's hard, to, oh, I'm actually getting better, maybe I will like it one day once I'm actually, you know, doing it for a long time. I think that also happens. We try something in the beginning and we're not good at it, and then we think we don't like it. It's like, no, we actually like it, we just don't like it that we're not good. But we like other people's when they're using that material, right? So that means we actually like it. We just have to keep practicing until we're at that stage. It's like, probably, I don't know, if I try to now play a sport or something, I'll probably be so bad at it and think I hate playing that sport. But maybe once I have a group of friends playing that sport after a year, I'll love it. Yeah. And I think we need to give enough time to actually know and not just like put it out there. So that's something that helped me a lot in the beginning. But again, this is such it really depends on where you are with the beginning part.
No, but I think, I love that, all of that. And I think that the biggest, and it's a lot of wisdom in there and common sense. And the biggest and most important, I think, takeaway is to do art where you are, wherever you are, however you can, whenever you can. And, you know, these days, and we often recommend this to people when we're coaching or when we talk about it with guests or on our podcast, and we're just riffing between the two of us. And that is, you know, like, for instance, Devani did homeschooling for a good portion of her schooling, and she started working in social media, serving clients as part of her business education when she was 15. So she was learning while earning, you know, so earned, you know, but through working. And so that's the thing. I mean, if you are, if someone hires you, it's because they've seen some of your work already. And so they're going to hire you to do some art, you know, and then they're hiring you. And if they don't like it, it's so easy as a student, like you said, to do it over. What if you did the art for the ladies of her child and she didn't want it? Meanwhile, you went to school, you got an education, you got practice, which is what artists do anyway on their own, you know, as a part of honing their craft. So there's so much people can do nowadays to learn one skill at a time, and then take that skill and actually begin implementing it in the marketplace. So speaking of that, you said that most of your sales, I believe, you were answering that most of your business has come from, your commissions have come from Instagram, correct?
Or people that I reach out to through email.
Through email. And the people that have found you on Instagram through your art, has there been any kind of trend to like what it is that they're looking for? Like, has it been like individuals? Has it been companies?
So the individual people asking for personal portraits and things like that, it's definitely much higher than companies. Probably because I guess that's easier to start with, and the prices are probably a lot lower too. But also, I think bigger companies and art directors, that's their way of searching nowadays for people. I don't think they even go straight to Google. I think they just go straight to their Instagram and Pinterest to look for. Yeah, so I think that's probably why that happens too. It's probably because I think individuals may go to Etsy and search for me there because they don't know exactly how to hire somebody from an Instagram account. But an art director is okay just emailing cold and just saying, hey, saw your work, would love to work, you know. So it's a mix of both. Like FabFitFun found me on Instagram. Jord found me on Instagram. So I think it's a mix of both, and just for different reasons, I guess. And the companies are usually obviously not interested in portraits, so they usually want me to do some sort of ink or different or watercolor, like custom painting for them. But it's kind of a mix.
Yeah.
Are you advertising on Instagram or mostly doing organic?
So now I advertise, but for the brand side, never actually advertised for my artwork, just because the cost of it, it's always so unknown, as I think. And I think now with the brand and the actual products, it's a little bit easier to plan it around the return. Because some people, what happens when you advertise on Instagram, or especially Instagram, I think, people see your thing, they love it, and then they save it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You know, and they like, oh, they might come back to you at one point, but you don't know. So you don't know if they actually came from an ad. It's hard to know. And I think usually with the product, people are more into like, I'm going to buy this right away or not. That's True. Probably why. But I don't think it hurts nowadays to give it a try. Maybe do a targeted ad straight to just art directors or people that only follow some specific companies. You can do that easily, and it might be worth it. You know, I probably should try that myself.
Yeah. So you mentioned your brand and selling products, and then you mentioned your artwork. Can you sort of give us an overview of what is the brand and the products, and how is that different from what you're doing with the artwork? Yeah. So even though they're just separate things, they're kind of all the same. What happened was I feel like because I like so many other things, I guess, not just drawing itself, I wanted to somewhat incorporate my other passions into one business. And I do think a lot of, even though I know this is going to probably sound really bad to a lot of people listening, but no matter what, art is home decor, right? You're not putting art in your closet or hiding in a box. Yeah. You're putting it up, and that's going to work with the rest of your home. Liking it or not, I know it's like nobody wants to say that they're buying a painting to match their couch, but it is what it is. You know, it's a piece of art for a home. It's not a piece of art for your car or to hang on your necklace. You know, it's for your home. Yeah. So I thought most people, when they're buying something for their home, they're not just like, I'm going to go to that store to just buy a bowl. So it's a bowl store or a vase store or a blanket store. It's a store that sells a lot of things for your home. And usually art is being sold or print in those locations. So I wanted to reach out to people that are looking for home things and not just art, because I felt not only I'll get a bigger range of people actually. They're searching for things that could find my art. They might just be looking for a blanket and then, oh, this is a great art piece. Maybe that will go out in my bedroom. Mm-hmm. So I thought that could help me expand. And at the same time, I could put my own illustrations into products. So I could create a line of bed sheets for kids, or, you know, maybe some sort of collection of pillows, and the drawing can be in them. So I felt that it would both work for each other. If that makes sense. And that's why I think it happened automatically. I was like, how can I combine all of this? I'm like, oh, nowadays there's something called lifestyle brand. Yeah. That will incorporate all of it together. So that's kind of how the idea started. And the idea of collections, I think, also came from maybe my background in fashion, and at the same time, my need for something to hold me and constrain me into like, you gotta finish this by that month, and you need to have 10, and that helps me actually like stay on track of not testing everything I could possibly test. I love how business minded you are about it, because it's becoming more common, but it hasn't been very common in the art space. And just taking it to the next step, it's like, I'm an artist, but you know, this art goes in homes and all of this should match and look nice. So that's awesome. I think that's why it's so hard to make a living with your art nowadays, because most artists, we don't have the business side. It's seen by most people as the annoying side, right? The side that you don't want to have to deal with it. So I like struggle a little bit with it in the beginning, because I just felt just putting great art out there, that should be enough, right? I'm like, people should come and look at this and say, I want to buy that thing from that girl and I'm going to order right now. And when that doesn't happen and you need to pay your bills, it's like, okay, how can I actually? So then I started going to the whole like business path of like,
reading all the books and listening to everything, and then making a business plan and actually making, you know, like make sure that all your expenses are actual things you need, and stop buying all these art supplies that you don't need.
Yeah, definitely. So, and speaking of pricing and finances, how do you decide how much to charge?
Yeah, hard question too. Gosh, how do I wish we all had like a book to refer to, like how much you should charge for original 8x10 on a watercolor page, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, no, it's an interesting point. And like, is there any kind of industry range or standard someplace, published someplace?
I think there is a book, something like that for illustrators but it's more for commissions, I think. But I can never trust a book to make my decisions at this when it comes to price, because you go online, there's people asking for $15 or $1,500. You know, it's tough, and I think it's trial and error. You try for $50 and people are buying. You tried it for $75, people are still buying. You try for $200, the sales dropped, or maybe they increase when you make a sale. So then you kind of know a little bit the range. Or when it's a commission, if they don't tell you their budget, you say a price. If they say yes right away, you knew it was probably too cheap. The next time when you get an offer, you say a little higher. And I don't think there is unfortunately, like an easier way to know besides, because even research, I can tell you, I'll just go research how other people are asking for it. But honestly, the prices are so different, you know. It depends of how big of a name you are. You can ask for some things like an actor's underwear that's really famous can be sold for $100,000, and my underwear is not gonna, you know what I mean? Like, obviously you can't. It's so hard. So I think for me, it was more that, like, I just kept trying different things and see, can I ask for a little more? Maybe I'll ask for, you know, and then sometimes it was too high, and then the person came down, and you learn. But
yeah, that makes sense. No, and absolutely. Basically, you're just talking about, you know, this is the market. The market's telling you, meaning your customers, you're letting you know, and including that it's important to take into account, okay, so if the price at $275, you didn't sell as many as when the price was $75, but it's, you know, you're still making more in your time, that would be worth it. You know, better to do one for $275 than to do maybe 5, than to do 2 at $75 if it takes you twice as long, you know.
That's totally, and that's like my husband's in my ear all the time, like, but Bruna, you're doing less work and making more money now. But at the same time, I have to, and this is a thing that for me, depending on what I'm selling, makes a lot of sense too. Sometimes selling more helps more the business and actually making more money. True. Just because that mom that orders something would tell her mom's friends. True. And that would bring actually more work. So it's so hard to know. Obviously, you need to know the minimum you need to charge to pay at least for your supplies and your time and pay your bills. Right. Once you get that, then you have that little bit of room to play. Yes. And you need to see what's in the beginning, especially what's more worth it to you. It's quantity of people that know about you, or just making more money for less work. Because then, you know, there are some people that only sell one piece a month, but it's so expensive that it's enough, right? Yeah. So
that's a great point.
It also depends on, I think, your medium, how long it takes for you to do. And there's so many things you need to take into account with pricing, from, you know, your own living to your own art.
It's all, so really the show, it makes sense. It's not black and white. In this case, it's not ink.
I know, that's why it's so hard.
Many shades of gray. And because it really, and I think in a way, what you're describing is that in a way, it's all a win. Because, you know, if you're selling your art and you're selling more for less, then you're getting referrals. If you're selling fewer for more, then it's valued your time better. And, you know, on the other hand of that is that while that person may be telling fewer people because there's only one person, they may be a higher clientele of people that they're referring to you. So I just yeah, exactly. So just a matter of, you know, throwing it all out there again, and just to keep on doing. I think the bottom line really keeps coming back to just keep doing your work, keep doing what makes sense, keep doubling down on what's working and refining and tweaking and improving on that.
And be patient. I know it's so hard. It's the hardest. Nobody wants to hear that, right? It's like we don't want to be patient. That's one skill. I think if I die with a little bit of patience, I'm going to be happy because I'm working so hard to be patient. I just want things to happen like yesterday.
Yeah.
Which is usually brings in all the other struggles of trying to do too much.
Yeah, true. So speaking of doing too much, so one of the things that some of the artists in our communities do is they like to exhibit their art at shows. Do you do any of that? And what is your perspective on that?
I've never done that, but I'm not opposed to either. I just think with shows, there's different ways, I guess, you can do a show. Like if a gallery, I guess, wants to display your work, you need to make sure that it's worth the percentage you're giving them, right? Because galleries ask so much. And I've done things that like stores bought my work to try to sell at their stores, and they would take a percentage of the sales too. And I think if you have a quantity amount of paintings laying around, might as well try, right? But if you only have a few and you need to make the most amount of every piece, maybe it's better to try to get all of the money from it for yourself and not sell somewhere else. But galleries and shows can probably give you great exposure if you're in a good location. I just don't know if my work, it's the right work for them, usually just because I do so much of commission, obviously, which takes so much of my time. And now with the collection, it's something still so new that I haven't yet able to reach out to even see, and like I said, like time, I don't know if they would probably want you to create a special collection just for them to display somewhere. So I think every opportunity you can get to try it, it's a good try, but I haven't done that yet.
I like that. I think for us, since we're more focused online, I think that it would make more sense for us to, if we were doing visual art, to put it online, because you have access to a wider direct buying audience. So it's like you're spending that time and effort building out your own shop, so to speak, and building out your own platform. So I think for us, that would be where we would go if we were doing that kind of visual art. But I was going to ask you also about, and we want to definitely come back to your shop just a little bit. Do you know about how many commissions? Is there like an average number of commissions that you're tending to do per week or per month now? So
an average, what I do is, it comes back, I guess, with the whole management, organization, and constricting myself. Like everything that I do is very timed and on a to-do list, on a plan, there's no like I wake up and we'll see what the day brings. There is zero of that, which my husband also always makes fun of me because there is no room for spontaneity in my life. It's like, we're gonna eat dinner, we're gonna watch this show at this time, then I gotta go to bed, I gotta wake up. It's like on a clock, and if I see that behind my schedule, and it's but that's the only way to get all of this stuff done and out there in the right time, right? So I drive myself crazy with all the schedules and organization, but that kind of helps me know how many commissions can I take, how many projects can I do it all at the same time, because unfortunately we only have a limited amount of time, right? And no matter how many new teas or coffee I can drink to make me sleep less, unfortunately I cannot find another way to have more time, which I try so hard. I tried everything you can think of to like optimize my time, but so what happens usually is I can get 2 to 3 pieces done a day if I'm working 8 to 12 hours, right? So, and depending on the time of the year or the project, if it's worth it, I will work weekends too. So it really depends, I guess, on the demand on the project itself. Like right now, to give you an example of how crazy things are, I probably have maybe 50 to 60 commissions booked.
Wow.
Yeah, which is crazy because 2 of them were big. One of them, it's a project for this new brand that this person's creating, And that was a big box of 50 illustrations. So that started maybe a month ago now. So I've done a lot of them done already. And then I got another project that is to create a calendar for this landscaping company. So that was another 14. And then obviously my Etsy shop is still going because I didn't know that those things were coming up. Yes. So that already had its own like 15 to 20 open orders.
Right.
So it is kind of crazy right now. It's not always like this at all. But the end of the year, it gets like really busy because everybody ordering stuff for Christmas. Right. So I usually know that from October to February, I won't have a life much. And it's just trying to get those things done. And again, it's a good time when you see that you're growing, because every year more things are showing up. It's just really hard to know when to say no, because you want all the work and you don't want to seem ungrateful and you don't know where the next thing's going to come. So I'm usually the crazy person. I'll say, sure, I'll do it. And then it's like, oh my God, like now I don't. But I tell myself it's a good problem to have. So I just need to figure out how to accomplish them all. But I would say if it wasn't for those two big projects, on average from just my Etsy shop, I'd probably get maybe 10 a week. So that's usually at right now, right? So obviously last year was probably 5. Right. And it does increase with time. And on top of that, I have the brand, which takes part of my day too, that I can't really just. So it's just, it's a lot, and it's. I feel like I'm overwhelming everybody listening to this.
No. We're a lot of people we know are they're multi-passionate creators, multi-talented creators, and have a lot going on. Yeah. You mentioned time optimization and that you'd tried all the things. What are like the key things you do to make all this run? The activities, whether it's waking up early, eating a specific diet, doing a specific productivity habit.
Yeah, I feel like everything works kind of thing. So there's not like one thing that I can say, do this and they will all work out. It's a combination, I think, of all those things. But I am a super morning person. I wake up at 4:30 every day. I know, but I also go to bed super early. Yeah. So I'm not the person watching prime TV, like for me, like 9:30, I can't even like function anymore. I might as well just go to bed. And like my husband's always like, I know we can watch this show. Everything's recorded and planned and like for the weekend, because I'm never awake for the good stuff. So that I think helps me a lot, because I think even when people say that they're not morning people, what they want to do at night is not work. It's have fun. So then I'm like, it's not that you're a morning, like, if you're working at night, then fine, you can call yourself a night person. Yeah. But if you're having fun, everybody wants to have fun at night. Yeah. I did too. Like that's when everybody's relaxing, right? So if you spend the majority of your hours at night and that's what you end up doing, or online, like having fun, anything you like reading or whatever, but it's actually your fun time, then I don't think you're not a morning person. You just want to have more fun. And I think that's okay. You just need to choose where your hours are going. You need to be very careful that you're not just saying, I'm not a morning person. I'm going to stay up until 2 in the morning. But what were you doing from 10 to 2? Yeah. And that's when I think it gets tricky. So I force myself to wake up early because I know I'm just going to be more productive. It's not that I'm not tired. It's just that it's works when at the end of the day I know I'll get more done than if I go to bed at 2, because I know I'll be slower at night. So I think that's a huge thing. Scheduling everything, I think it's another key, because it's it's even hard because you don't know how long things will take exactly, especially with our work, right? Something can take half an hour to 5 hours. You don't know, but you need to have at least that block of a minimum amount of time you need. And even if you don't do this full time and you're just doing this after you come home from work and you're working, you need to know like from 6 to 8 what you're exactly doing. Because if you come 6 o'clock and then you're going to decide what you're going to do, you're going to waste at least half an hour. And then you're going to search for inspiration, then your photo, and then you're going to get all your materials, and then 7 o'clock, right? Yeah. So if you decide on a Sunday, Monday I'll do this, Tuesday I'll do that one, and even if you don't have those 2 hours, you'll get more done. So I try to have, at least my week fully prepared and blocked and planned. So I know at least if something new comes up, how am I going to make that work? So I think that makes me be able to get more done than people would think, probably, because it's all timed. Like my social media is timed. I'm not just, let's see what's going on Instagram. It's like, no, I have from 12 to 1 o'clock to post, to comment, to like, to browse, and 1 o'clock hits, I need to go back to drawing, or I'm not going to finish the drawing, because it's so easy to get lost in one more page, one more thing to do. And,
one more smoothie bowl photo, guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Exactly.
That's fantastic discipline and structure. We love that. And speaking of being very time conscious, we still have a couple more questions we wanted to ask you, but it's like we're at the maximum of what we said we would take of your time. Do you have?
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Those are not, and that's the thing. I'm strict with my time, but I also have a realization that some things are worth taking the time. Obviously, talking to you guys, it's
okay.
If it's okay if I don't browse on Instagram for 20 more minutes.
Okay. So I know our audience will want to know. So we want to get back again to your store, kind of in closing with that. But first, your other store, you mentioned Etsy a few times. And so we have people who have things on Redbubble and on Etsy. And I don't think anyone's really doing that well on either one. So what can you tell us? How is your Etsy store doing? Is it, profitable? Is it doing really well? What tips do you have?
Yeah, so Etsy's being actually really good to me, even though I'm probably not as grateful to it as it should be, because I try to sell as much on my website and not on Etsy. Especially in the beginning, I was like, I'm not going to be one of those Etsy sellers. I'm going to have my own shop, but then I was like, I'm going to open just to see. Yeah. And then the majority of orders were coming from them. And I think it's just because people are there to shop, right? People are not there to just, it's not an Instagram account that they're just browsing. They might see your stuff. They're there to shop. It's a shop place. So if you can get your work to be seen by the shoppers with the right titles, maybe I do a lot of ads on Etsy for my custom portraits, because they bring you to the first page, and people don't have patience to go to the 5th page to see what else is out there. Yes. So whatever you can get to the first page, the ads might be worth. In the beginning, you might not see a big exchange of return, but since my items in there are most custom portraits, they're more expensive. They usually, even if it cost me $10 for that ad, it was worth it, because they're paying like $200 for the portrait, right? So you have to, I think that's a good thing. You should definitely try to get in the first page, and try to only advertise your higher price items, I guess, because the lower prices will be hard to make it worth the ads, I guess, especially if you're doing something that has a lot of competition. So yeah, I think it's also patience, right? Like the first year I probably got 5 sales, and even now, like it probably shows there less than 300 sales, but it's because Etsy also doesn't count the sales that order more than one item. So if a person ordered 10 things, they will only consider 1 sale.
That's odd.
Or let's say if it's a custom listing you created for somebody, let's say the 50 drawings came from Etsy, they only consider 1. So don't look at people's also selling pages. Oh, she only has 50, but maybe it was 50 that had multiple things in that one order. So it's hard to know from there. And my shop right now only has the 4 things, which is home portraits, baby portraits, pet portraits. Like it's only portraits right now. I don't have actual artwork being sold there, but I used to have it, and I think it still worked. I just don't have it anymore, just because it's one more thing for me that right now it's just not worth the time to try to sell them and advertise them or anything like that. But I probably will introduce like a big sale, because I have been organizing my old artwork, and I do want to like try to create a big sale for them. So Etsy would be the place that I would do that in, and not my website, because I also would like to have like the ink just on my website, and then Etsy become just the watercolor. That's my way to at least having it organized. And I think the people on Etsy are the clients that actually like the cute things, so watercolor is more their thing than
Mhm.
No.
So is your Etsy work then that you're getting commission work from what you have on Etsy, or are they actually buying the things that you have that are showing up there?
Both, which is funny because the two big projects that I was mentioning to you guys that I have this month, the calendar and the other brand, they both came from Etsy.
Wow.
Oh, cool.
Because since they are home related things, they went there and then they saw my home portraits there, and then so that's what I'm saying. The more you can put your stuff out there, you don't know who's going to find you, right? You don't, it's more exposure, I guess.
Definitely. Yeah. So it shows like on your Etsy store, it says 303 sales, and then you've only been on Etsy since 2016. And based on your comment, that means you've actually sold more than that because it's only showing one sale per customer. So that's 303 customers, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that's fantastic. So in 2 years, I mean, that's really fantastic. So it definitely looks like a good source for you.
And I also think you have to keep in mind, let's say a store is selling stickers. Obviously, they're going to have a bigger amount of sales, right? Because every item was probably $5, $3. So it's easier to find 10 people to pay $3 than 5 people to pay $200 to $300. So it's hard to also compare other people's selling. So I think that's a lot of people also feel like, oh, I only have to, but like you have to see what you're selling. You know, like I'm only selling items that are above $150. So
yeah,
don't compare yourself to people with like thousands of sales because you don't know what items they were selling to make that bulk number.
Absolutely. That's a great point, which makes it really hard, I think, to identify the top Etsy sellers because it depends on what you're selling and, you know, the volume.
Yeah. Don't compare yourself.
So, period, right? Yeah. So is it that, okay, so this is like the closing kind of thing we really wanted to learn more about. So you have a shop on your website. So we're wondering, is it Shopify? And then also your collection, your studio collection, lifestyle design, lifestyle collection. Are those all things that you've designed? Is it from art that you've created? Like, how is that working? Where are the products coming from and what shopping cart kind of system are you using?
So it's through Squarespace. And since I'm doing collections, every collection, which that started this year, this whole idea of releasing through collections. And the first one, it was only the artwork because I actually didn't have enough time to get into products or anything yet. So it was just that collection of the pieces for then. And then I think it was in the beginning of September, I launched a second collection. And that had some home decor items as well as the art pieces. And those home pieces were just things that I've found from other manufacturers that I decided to just resell on my store. But that's just because since it's the beginning and I'm still exploring the idea of selling home decor, I didn't want to go into full production of my own stuff and put all that money into whatever it's going to take to, because when you manufacture your own thing, you need to do like 1,000 pieces of something, right? So then you would only be able to start your shop with one thing, probably.
Right.
So I didn't want to do that because I want to first see if this actually has a good response from people. So first I was like, I'm just going to find things that I think work with the theme of the artwork. And if that goes well, I can save the money from the sales from that to actually start bringing, hopefully, things that I actually designed, like maybe fabrics and wallpaper and actual objects later on. But again, it would be so great if I had all this money and somebody to invest in the business and be able to do all of that from the beginning. But it's a lot of risk, right? I don't know yet how that's going to work out. So I didn't want to invest yet on that side. Why? So many great people already creating some beautiful things, you know, I don't have a problem reselling them.
Right. So are you buying them? Like you had some beautiful, like marble platters, you had some wooden bowls and things.
It's a mix of local people that I've found and online people that I've reached out to. And I think some of these actual vendors are just people representing other sellers from maybe even China or other countries. I know there's some things that I was trying to get from Brazil that I actually had to talk to a representative that was reselling or just representing those sellers to buyers. So it's a mix of everything that the most important thing that I wanted to do was just create a cohesive idea of a theme. So I had to look for a bunch of random places to what can you create the idea for the lodge, which is the name that I gave for the latest one.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So on those people that you're finding, are you saying that you're sending the clicks to their site, or you're actually buying them? And
I bought.
Okay.
I'm actually shipping because I want to not only pack with the whole branding design with my own tissue paper and put my own card about telling about my own artwork, because I think that's what makes you different and people come to you, right? They can buy if I'm going to send them to another store, I'm actually losing that customer to that store.
Right.
So
yeah, that's a great point.
It's hard. I know it's easier if you're just an influencer and you not actually want to sell anything yourself. But since I want to sell my artwork, I want to keep these customers in store and coming back to me and not to another. That's why I chose to actually purchase those products and then ship them.
And that's
so smart.
On your homepage I think it's the homepage, is your YouTube video. Is that your kitchen?
Yeah.
That's gorgeous. It's amazing.
Thank you. We just redid the whole house last year when we moved back in here. So yeah, that's why I think that probably forced me to be more into home decor, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yes. And so, and your videos and all of this, we haven't seen them all, but we're definitely going to go through them. We love your brand, everything you're doing, your wisdom, your work ethic, your
structure, creativity,
your business sense. Yeah, it's just, fantastic. We're very impressed with what you're doing, and we're looking forward to continuing to follow you, look forward to sharing this podcast with our audience and to stay in touch with you, just keep up with how things are going for you.
Thank you so much. Can I actually ask you guys a question too?
Yeah.
So why you guys decided to do the podcast? Why did you decide to create this?
Because we saw a lot of artists struggling with thriving, and we wanted to build a platform that could support an artist from anywhere from an artist starting out or just an artist who needed help getting exposure to their work. And we called it I Create Daily because we also view entrepreneurs as artists. So not just visual artists, not just writers. We wanted to create a brand that really helped artists figure out the selling aspect of selling their work, but then also providing a platform to share their work so that they could also grow. And then a community, of course, because artists love community. As much as we like isolating ourselves while we're working, we also like touching base with other artists and other creators.
Yeah, but we love creativity, and on all areas, our primary area of creativity right now is writing and the business side of it, creating websites and connecting people. We love connecting with people and having conversations and learning about what people are doing in the world, interesting work, artists, creators, and then, to share that with others, because everything you shared here today will be so helpful for artists from just starting out to already working and selling their art. The more we have these conversations, the more I think we help each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, I'm so happy that I was able to talk to you guys, because it's more, you guys are giving me almost like a validation for what I'm doing. It's going okay. But at the same time, I think people do need to hear all the other episodes that you guys have been putting out. I think it's all a combination of all this information that nowadays we're so lucky to have it available. We need to not take it for granted, like listen, take notes and listen again. Don't just okay, great, next, actually make a plan from all this information that you listen to. Because I think we listen to so many podcasts and books nowadays that it's so easy to get lost with all the information. And I think it's so important to, take your time with each one of them, actually make notes and make that into a plan and add it to your calendar. Yeah. Because if not, you're just going to lose that note and into the mix of everything else is going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And to
That's
not let our consumption outweigh or exceed our production.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
So speaking of that, do you listen to podcasts or music while you're creating?
I listen to podcasts when I'm running, actually, when I exercise, and audiobooks when I'm doing the art drawings, just because podcasts usually are almost more compact with information, because it's just that hour, there 40 minutes with all that stuff. And I find that if I'm doing that and drawing, I just want to actually start doing the things that the podcast is telling me to do and write notes. I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta, and the audiobooks is more paced. Yeah. So that's easier to do when you're doing art. And then if you can actually, like, maybe when you're driving, listen to podcasts, when you have that short period of something, because that will help you also, like, I'm only listening to one a day and making the most out of that one, instead of like, okay, I have 8 hours to do something, I'm going to listen to 8 podcasts. You're not going to be able to actually, like, make the most out of them. It's too much,
Right. So what book have you listened to recently? What audiobook?
Oh, this is actually a funny one. It's from this real estate agent. I think it's called Sell It Like Sirhan. It's the name of the book. And it's all about how do you sell more anything.
Good.
So that I have not finished yet, but that's been already like such a, eye-opening on like selling, that it's so much more of an active thing than just waiting to buyers come to you.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. Well, we mentioned, so your coloring book is it on Amazon now? Your latest?
Yes.
Okay, good. We'll definitely be sure to link. How is that doing, by the way, on Amazon?
To be honest, I don't know. It's one of those things, how you're like, you're done with that thing and then you like forget about it. Yeah. It's been 2 years now, I think, that's been out there. And in the beginning it was like, oh, I have a coloring book. And now it's like, oh yeah, I also did that, know?
Yeah, got it.
It's something that gets peak usually either during holidays or some sort of sporting event. Mm-hmm. So it's not like a coloring book, I think, that will be selling at any point. So it's hard for me to also know. But again, it was a self project. It wasn't like I went to a publisher to get this published. So if people were thinking about, I'm like, just do it. If you sell 5 of them, you sold 5 of them, but at least it's, in your portfolio, it's learn something from it. Now you can say that you have a book. And I got lucky that mine actually, I sell probably maybe 10 a month. So, it's more like, it was such a great experience. And now I'm actually writing my next book. Oh, nice. Instead of being a coloring book. Who knows when that's going to be ready, but you learn something from every time you do something like that and you put yourself out there. So we're so lucky that we can self-publish and just publish all your ideas, people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally.
Don't overthink it,
Yes. Don't overthink it. Just publish it. Fantastic. Yep. Well, thank you so much, Bruna, for your time and sharing.
Yes. And all your wisdom and advice.
Thank you guys. It's been such almost like therapeutic to just be talking it out loud, things that you just keep it inside, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. Artists tend to, like Devani said earlier, we tend to work alone. We have to, entrepreneurs often are isolated. Artists are often isolated. Yeah. So it's good to share it all out there. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for joining us for the I Create Daily podcast. Please let us know what creatives you would like us to interview and what topics you would be interested in hearing more about.
And if you enjoyed this show, please leave a review on iTunes. We value your feedback. We read all the reviews, and it just helps us get the word out on the I Create Daily podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.